Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ellie Garrity, and I am the manager of Alumni Career Programs with the Alumni Association. We're excited that you're able to join us for today's webinar, How to Make Working from Home Work for You, presented by Rebecca Siegel. This webinar is part of the Alumni Association's Professional Development Webinar Series, in which we hope to provide thought-provoking and valuable content that will help alumni like you achieve your personal and professional goals, especially during today's climate. Please keep a close eye on our upcoming webinar series as we look to provide relevant content during the COVID-19 outbreak and help you continue to be successful at work and at home. Okay, we have a lot of information to cover today, but we want to give you the opportunity to get the most out of this webinar. So please feel free to submit your questions through the presentation in the chat box, as Rebecca is happy to answer any and all questions you may have. Now about our presenter. Rebecca Siegel is a blogger, content creator, and lifestyle writer. She's a graduate of the University of Maryland College Park, class of May 2010, with a bachelor's in communications and double minor in Spanish and Chinese. Her background in foreign languages, Spanish and Chinese, teaching, living abroad, and travel helped her create the lifestyle brand at Half Half Travel with her partner, Dan. Her creations have been featured in Cosmopolitan, Insider, Lonely Planet, Oprah Magazine, and Conde Nast Traveler. She has been working remotely since June 2018, both around the world, on 4 continents, and in her home in Brooklyn, New York. As I hand it over to Rebecca, we will start our first poll so Rebecca can learn a little bit more about the audience. And quick reminder to anyone who's tuning in, please make sure that your video is off so that we can only see the presenter. Great, now I will hand it over to Rebecca and launch our first poll.
Great, thank you so much, Ellie. I'm very happy to be here to have this opportunity to share remote work as it has worked for me and as I hope it can work with everyone today with the Alumni Association. So as Ellie said, my name is Rebecca, class of 2010, University of Maryland, go Terps, and I'm presenting today from Brooklyn, New York, where I live. So right now we are looking at everybody who's answering the polls, and these were some questions that I really thought could kind of give us an introduction onto how we all think about remote work and how we believe in it or not, and also how our attitude might change toward remote work starting from last week when a lot of the country went into lockdown, and moving forward to see how long this might be a part of our lives and how we can remain productive, efficient, and positive about the future of our careers and the future of remote work as well. So let's see the results right now. We're saying, did you work from home before the outbreak of COVID-19? We have the polls moving a mile a minute as everybody gets their vote in, but the majority say no, they did not work from home before coronavirus, or essentially before March 13th, when a lot of our lives changed forever. So the minority were working from home before the outbreak of the virus. 2, if you weren't already working from home before COVID-19, was it something you were interested in doing? The majority say yes, they were interested in remote work. And I can say that's exactly how I felt about remote work also, but I was a bit apprehensive about working remotely on my own and outside a traditional office before it became a part of my life as well. The last is, do you view working from home as a challenge or an opportunity? The minority say it's a challenge. The minority also say it's an opportunity, but the majority say both. It's a challenge and an opportunity, which I also agree with because it doesn't always go your way. But I think every day you work from home, you learn a bit more about yourself and a bit more about technology and also a bit more about how the world works together, even if we're not in the same place. So we're going to put the polls aside for now, and we're going to begin the presentation. If you experience any technical difficulties during this, please reach out to the chat box and let Ellie know if you can't hear me at any time, but we hope everything's gonna go as planned. Another thing to note, the way we plan to run this webinar is after each section. So after each topic that I present, you'll have a chance to ask targeted questions toward that topic that you can feed into the questions box, and Ellie will provide me with those questions to answer. So without further ado, Welcome once again. This is How to Make Working from Home Work for You, a webinar by me, Rebecca Siegel of Half Half Travel, which is my website. It's halfhalftravel.com. Again, it's a brand that I run with my partner, Dan. And I graduated from the University of Maryland about a decade ago. So here we go. Thank you for joining. Today, you'll be finding out how to solve the following: needing a home work environment, tips for working from home for the first time, or how to improve if you've already been working from home, and locating productivity tips for this new lifestyle that is sure to be a lifestyle for lots of us for a few weeks, months, maybe even a year or two to come. Okay, today we're discussing making a work from home schedule, setting up a home office, staying connected to professional contacts and how to do that, and also turning working from home into a lifestyle that hopefully we can enjoy and hopefully that brings a lot of benefits to us. As we begin, please make yourself comfortable. Please do keep an open mind. Please think creatively and flexibly, meaning whenever I present a tip, try to visualize how that's something you could be open to and how you could make, a part of your schedule, a part of your home setup, a part of your lifestyle. And of course, stay positive, because a lot of us are apprehensive right now. A lot of things are on the rocks in the world. A lot of us have fears every day, but the best we can do for ourselves is to constantly stay positive and hopeful. So, starting with my University of Maryland story, I graduated with a BA in Communications and Public Relations with double minors in Chinese language and Spanish and Latin languages in May, 2010, not 2020. That's my bad. So 2010, which was 10 years ago. I graduated from the University of Maryland Honors Program, and I lived in Denton Hall on North Campus, Frederick Hall on the Quad, I'm now not sure the name of it anymore, and Commons 5. My activities were mostly with University of Maryland Hillel, it's the Jewish Center, and the Jewish Student Union, at which I held a leadership role during my junior year and maybe even my senior year, but this was a while ago. A bit about my professional history. So my history with remote work is a bit short. I've only been working from home and working remotely since June 2018, so coming up on 2 years. But since then, I have been working a lot on my own as an entrepreneur, as a writer, balancing a schedule, balancing deadlines, balancing clients, and learning how to do this with really not having anyone ever tell me how to do it, but figuring it out for myself. And I think that's a lot of what the game entails. I'm a blogger and a writer. My main brand, my main website is Half Half Travel, which is, as I mentioned, a brand I run with my partner. I write remote work content alongside travel content. As you can imagine, the travel content is right now taking a back seat as I focus on putting out remote work content to help professionals all over the world balance their careers from their homes or from wherever it is that they find themselves productive. I'm also a social media manager, so I work with brands to create meaningful social media content to further their brands and to provide them with meaningful content that they can share with customers. And I'm a photographer and entrepreneur. My partner and I own a lifestyle photography business in New York, which is also unfortunately on pause right now as we maintain a safe social distance from everyone in the city. All right, a bit about my remote work writing. So again, at halfhalftravel.com, I'm putting out new types of tips, tricks, and hacks every single day. Most recently, we've put out how to stay connected while working from home, which is definitely something you can visit after this webinar is over. How to create a daily work from home schedule, which is a topic I'll be covering today for you here. How to set up a home office in a small apartment. It doesn't have to be that you have a small apartment to enjoy this article, because we provide a lot of tips and suggestions about different types of equipment that you can use while working from home, and how to work from home for the first time. Again, for anyone who's doing this for the first time, or from anyone who'd like a list of additional suggestions that can make working from home better. So let's make working from home work for you. We're gonna master work from home schedule tips, learn which tools are key in a home office setup, and gain insight into maintaining human connection. Lastly, we'll make remote work a positive part of your professional life. So let's go. Part 1, making a work from home schedule that works. And this is one of the biggest challenges for lots of us when we wake up, we're in our home, and we don't go to an office. So let's see. What does a morning schedule look like? So for me, a lot of it is about my alarm, and it's about getting out of bed when that alarm goes off. You probably have a morning routine that you had when you were commuting, and that probably looked kind of rushed. You probably had to forego some things like sitting down with the paper, or, having time to check your emails on your way out, or even having time for a hobby in the morning. But now with a different type of morning routine, you can take the time that typically went toward commuting and you can put it to something useful, which for me and my partner, Dan, who I live with, we've put into having coffee together, checking our emails together in our living room. And what I like to do is, even if I wake up and I feel kind of tense, I set out for a 5 or 10 minute online yoga class where I can stretch out my back and just feel fresh and ready to sit at my desk for the rest of the day. So your morning routine can really be anything that works for you, but it is good to do a bit of the same thing every day and to take a break from that on weekends, which of course, has a sword thrown in there, because on the weekends these days, we're also not leaving our houses if you live in one of the epicenters of COVID-19 right now. But hopefully you can do something that's not work related on the weekend to set your inside day apart from what a working day looks like, your Monday through Friday. So next, when we're not working, we're of course trying to take breaks. And what I like about taking breaks is that I really try to look forward to them. So what a lot of people want to know, working from home and not having your colleagues next to you is, are you allowed to take breaks? Well, of course you are. Everybody needs breaks in order to refresh and stay focused so that you can get back on task for the next hour or 2 hours or for the next meeting that you have. So what I like to do is to work in some break times, and typically I will put those around meals. So, take some time to step into my kitchen and make a snack or make lunch and then get right back to work. And what I recommend is staying on task with breaks. And these do help productivity and help avoid burnout. They also help you get up and stretch your back. Because when you're in your office, you have a bit of a walk to the restroom or to the office kitchen, or you might have a meeting on another floor. When it's all within your home, you don't get that type of step count. So definitely try to get up and get your heart rate going up for at least a few minutes of the day in between meetings and obligations. There's also break time activities you could do. You could snack, stretch, go for a walk, or cook, because that definitely gets you standing and not sitting. And sometimes what you can do while you're cooking is you can stretch out your back, you could jog in place, you could, do some type of stretching on the floor while something's cooking or while something's in the microwave, anything so that you're not in a sedentary position all day long in the single room of your house. And of course, your breaks should be refreshing. So lastly, completing your workday. One of the biggest, I would say, challenges of working from home is that when you are done working from home, you're still home. And so in order to separate work from play, even at home, it helps to designate a home office for work and only for work. And that's more challenging if you live in an apartment with fewer rooms, but if you do live in a house in a suburb, hopefully you have either a designated desk in a room, like a living room or a den, or if you can turn a guest room into a home office. I know my parents have done that in the years since all the kids moved out of the house. My parents are both working from home right now. My mom works from a guest room that she's turned into an office, and my dad has turned our whole family room into a large kind of, office space where he can be on his laptop and also take calls loudly, and my mom won't hear him at the same time. So in Dan and my apartment, it's a bit harder than that, but luckily, we have a living room and a bedroom. So if one of us has to be on the phone, we split up and there's a door and a wall between us, and everything tends to work out. But mostly designating the home office for work means that you shouldn't be having leisure time in there later, because it just feels like you haven't left where your work was done. So that's kind of like a mental way to separate the two. And lastly, you definitely want to take time to decompress and focus on leisure. Maybe that's shutting your laptop, putting it away, putting it back in its case or in its briefcase, putting it somewhere where you can't see it, and taking time to do things, get your mind off work, and also to, take care of yourself and to do things that you enjoy. So now we're jumping into our first question and answer session. If anyone has provided Ellie with a question in the questions box, I can hop on to getting you an answer right now.
Great, thanks Rebecca. So I'll just encourage everyone to chat me any questions you have about the first section that Rebecca went over. Rebecca, I'll get you started while we're waiting for some questions to come in. I know you mentioned trying to distinguish between when you're working and when you're home, even when you have to do both at home. What do you suggest as some activities to do after work hours that don't also require looking at a screen? For example, catching up on your favorite shows or checking your personal email.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think just based on the amount of things we can do with the internet, a lot of these things wind up being looking at a screen. Although, come to think of it, what I really like about not looking at a screen is listening to podcasts. And while I do things like clean my house, or I know my partner and I are considering cleaning out some of our kitchen drawers this week while we have time on our hands. If you do something like that, like a physical cleaning or a type of hobby and neatening up, and you put on a podcast, you can still be learning or in tune with the news or even listening to comedy without looking at a screen. So I really recommend podcasts. And then if you want to take a break on the couch, what I like to do is either put on another podcast or some type of instrumental music while I read magazines, read books, or even, do some light stretching or some types of like push-ups and yoga on the floor, even while taking a phone call. So those are all things you can do without looking at a screen. Although if you don't mind looking at a screen, my boyfriend and I like to watch cooking videos and then hopefully put those types of cooking suggestions to work in the kitchen. And lots of people like to watch TV and movies, of course. So any of those things. We have
Great. We have a couple more questions coming in. I'll do my best to get to some of them. Stephanie had a great question regarding kind of the social distancing place that we're in right now. How do you distinguish working from home weekdays versus weekends during the COVID-19 outbreak? She's finding herself that weekends she feels like she has to get right to work, and I've heard from a couple folks too that some of the days tend to blend together. So could you address that?
Sure. Yeah, the days do blend together. And I was in a Zoom call yesterday with a group of friends from my professional remote work network. And one of them said, wow, what a Sunday. And we all said, it's Monday. So the days do tend to blend together. I would say one thing I've been doing on the weekends, I think it's only been 2 weekends since we've really had the inside our homes policy, is sleep in. And by that, I mean staying up late on a Friday night just to make it feel like it's not a work night, whether that's catching up on a TV series or watching a special movie, surfing YouTube, putting, on some music and reading books, or spending time with family or friends or a pet, FaceTiming someone, and then sleeping in on Saturday so that you feel like it really is the weekend, you can relax. And then just waking up on the weekends and not having to jump online. I think it's cool to get into the kitchen and maybe work on a new recipe, or really like spend some time putting on music and like taking everything at a slower pace, just so that it doesn't feel like a work day. And then, maybe putting on like a 60-minute yoga or Pilates from YouTube, or any of the physical, trainers you might subscribe to. People sometimes have like their gyms providing online content. And doing something like that just to like tell yourself like, I don't have a schedule today, I can hang out. And then doing whichever, errands or hobbies you're able to do outside your home, weather pending, but, given that we're supposed to not touch anyone and not go far from our homes, seeing if you can just take a walk around, whether it's your building or your yard or the neighborhood, to tell yourself today is a day to relax. I hope that helped.
Great, thank you. I'm going to do one more question here, and I promise that I'll get to some of the other questions when we have time for Q&A at the end. But we have one from Aurelia, who's actually a past webinar speaker. I'm glad she's joining us. But her question is in regards to your suggestion about taking breaks. That kind of helps break up the workday when you're working from home. How can you distinguish between taking a break and maybe doing something that would be a distraction or a procrastination from some of the work that you actually have to get done?
Yeah, that's a great question too. I think the way to avoid getting too distracted with any single thing is to give yourself a schedule. For example, I will pencil into my calendar that there's something I have to work on, and I'll give myself a deadline so that if I say like, ooh, I got sucked into this podcast and into cleaning my kitchen, but it's 3:30 and I'm supposed to be doing this for such and such a client right now because I know I want to deliver it to them and have my invoice to them by 5 o'clock. So telling myself that I have deadlines to hit and that my procrastination can wait is something that works for me. I hope that helped.
Great. Yeah, that's
Okay.
awesome. I will let you
Awesome.
continue,
Okay.
and I'll make note of the rest of the questions to circle back to at the end.
Okay, perfect. Let's move on. We're gonna jump right into setting up a home office. And this is surprisingly something that my boyfriend Dan and I were able to work on together when we both started working from home during this social distancing phase of our lives that we're currently in. Because I think while maybe a lot of partners or spouses will have maybe just one of them was working from home or working from home several times a week, it's now that we find ourselves with both members of a couple working at home, or maybe the whole family working at home. And how do you set up a space where everyone can be productive and also have their own type of privacy is the challenge a lot of us are facing. So what I want to say first is no one is alone. Everyone is considering this a work in progress. And as you can see in this photo, this is a photo of our home office. We have one desk chair that, because we live in a 1-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn, we take turns using, just because I also don't want my dining room, living room space to feel like it is an office. So we've chosen to have one desk chair that we'll share at different points in the day. For example, I'm sitting in it right now, but my boyfriend was using it this morning. So you really have to take this case by case on how much space you have in your home and how many people are working from home, but we're going to see what you can do with that space. So first, the home office basics. Again, this might have been nothing you ever in your life thought you would have to consider, but let's start with the basics of your space. So first, you're gonna want some privacy for your work. I know some people don't like feeling like they're being watched when they're working. I certainly don't. I don't even like really sitting next to someone with nothing in between us. I think that feels weird. So privacy is something to consider when you're looking for your space. And also the elimination of distractions. That could be anything from a desk that looks out a window onto a busy street that you can't help but watch, to a place in your home where you can see your kids playing. All of these can be distracting. So find a way to eliminate those types of issues. And then separation from other parts of the home. For example, if you are setting up your home office in the den or in the family room where your kids who are now home because they're being homeschooled tend to walk through the room and interrupt you, that's not ideal either. So try to find a place with a closed door, with closed walls, or in a part of the home where the family won't be passing by in a social way. And lastly, there's Wi-Fi strength to consider. Given that we live in a Brooklyn-sized apartment, as most people in cities can relate to, the Wi-Fi works pretty strongly throughout the whole space. But when you have a 4, 5, 6-bedroom home, it depends on how many routers you have. There are definitely going to be some parts of the home where Wi-Fi isn't as fast as in others. And you want to consider that when you're looking for your home office space, in addition to the other factors, just to make sure that when you're on a call, someone says, oh, you know what, I can't hear you. And you definitely want to avoid that because you don't want to be the guy who's breaking up in that call. So next, looking at home office tools. Again, these might be things that seemed like things you'd never have to put on a shopping list, but now that the time is here to set up this type of office space in your home, you actually have all of these types of things at your fingertips, and there are ways you can make working from home productive, comfortable, and also ergonomic so that your back doesn't hurt every day. So you might find that it's more ideal to have a desk or a writing table rather than a kitchen counter, or a desk in a bedroom that wasn't really meant for actual work. An ergonomic chair is also something that will really support your back. And you don't realize that until you start working from a dining room chair or like a living room chair. An ergonomic chair puts your back into a shape where when you lean back, you do get some support, and definitely fewer aches. So investing in a chair that also looks good in your home are the two things to kind of pair together when you're making a choice. A laptop stand is something you can see in this photo. If you think about how your neck works when you look down at a laptop, that's how a lot of us can get aches in our necks, because if you're in an office, you're probably not looking down at your screen, but your head is at a level, your head is more level and your eyes are looking at eye level toward a screen, not down. So when your eyes are looking down, your neck tends to go down, and that's why we'll wind up getting aches or maybe even worse, neck problems. So a laptop stand is something that helps your laptop go up so that it goes back to eye level. Other things are a wireless mouse to go with that laptop. You can see we have one in this photo, and a wireless keyboard that pairs with Bluetooth connection to the laptop itself, so that if the laptop is raised, the keyboard remains at hand level. A desk riser, which is not pictured, is something that can make your entire laptop, keyboard, and mouse setup rising a few inches, maybe 6 to 12, so that you can turn your standard desk into a standing desk, and then you can make it go back down. So that's something to look into. You can see our suggestions for it in our home office article, which I'll connect you to later in this webinar. And lastly, soundproof headphones are something you may have never considered needing, but when you realize how many other types of distractions exist, soundproof headphones block out everything from your dishwasher to noisy heat pipes to the noise on the street, or maybe it's your dog or even your spouse who might be on a conference call as well. So blocking out those noises can help you focus better on your work. And lastly, a lot of us have second or even third monitors at work in our office setups. I mean, in our real offices, in our traditional offices. What we have going on at home, as you can see in this photo as well on the left side, is that if you are comfortable, if you're looking for a second monitor, but you don't want a massive one taking up space, maybe because you're set up in, you know, a guest room or in your living room, using an iPad hooked up to your laptop can provide a second monitor space where you can recreate that kind of dual monitor setup. Again, all of these suggestions are linked in my home office article, which I will provide to you at the end of the webinar. Lastly, we're looking at home office comfort. So here are ideas for anyone who wants a personal touch so that your home office doesn't seem sterile, boring, lacking in, you know, the personality you would like to be seeing when you walk in there for the day. So let's see. We like plants in our office. You can see we have one on our desk in this photo. I like candles, especially if it's rainy out. I like lighting a candle to feel more cozy. We have two ways we like making coffee in the morning. We have a Chemex for a pour over, and we have a French press, which is another way to brew coffee. And we only get coffees we really like, so that, you know, we have a nice start to our day. A set of teas if you're not a coffee person. A silent fan if you need some airflow in your space. A Bluetooth speaker if you want to play instrumental or relaxing music like I do if I'm getting into some writing or if I'm not having a call. A desk lamp, which we don't have because we have some other lamps set up, but for anyone who works in a sort of darker room or is going to be doing some night work, a desk lamp is a way to not have a fluorescent overhead light on and to feel really kind of like industrial. And lastly, you might need an extension cord or a charger station because of all the new types of tech that you now have in your home, whether it is charging those noise canceling headphones at night or charging that iPad, charging your laptop, or any of these other items. Okay, so as mentioned, all of these are linked and suggested by brand in my home office guide that I provide at the end of this webinar, and we're jumping into home office setup questions right now.
Great, I'll give people a chance to chat some questions, and I'll also give folks a chance to chat us if they are actually already doing some of these things at home. Okay, we have a question from Julia. And it looks like, and I've gotten this question from a couple other folks before. So let's see if you can tackle this one, Rebecca, about working from home with a family. We had a question earlier about taking breaks potentially when your kids are around. So if your kids see you taking breaks, they may want to interact with you and maybe play or something like that. But how can you differentiate kind of taking breaks knowing that your kids are at home and finding time for yourself there?
Yeah, so I know this is an issue I heard from my friend yesterday who has a 1.5-year-old, and he and his wife are both lawyers, and of course they're trying to balance this work from home thing with having a toddler running around the house trying to probably chew on everything. So how do you manage spaces, and how do you manage it so that no one's in their way and no conversations are crossing? She says she doesn't have any spaces except her room. I would say if it comes down to eliminating noise and also having some privacy to take that call or to take that meeting, make use of your bedroom is my first idea. And that just comes out of need, because right now, I mean, this is a very unique time in all of our lives and in the world where kids are home, parents are home, everyone is home doing work and doing school. And as a lot of us can see, it's not ideal. And it's how it is, and we all have to make it work. So I know you're trying to avoid mixing your bedroom with work, but I would say use the bedroom as kind of like a safe space. If you need an elimination of noise and an elimination of kids walking by, walking in, say, you know, I'm going to the bedroom to take this call or to sit with the laptop in my bed just to finish something. Because you have to make the best with what you have. And I would say you're lucky that you have a bedroom where you probably have a door that closes, whereas other people do not, especially if a family is living in an apartment, you know, just having fewer spaces with fewer types of flexibility. So that is my first thought. And in terms of taking care of kids while also balancing meetings, I would say what Dan and I do, even though we don't have kids, is we share calendars. And we wake up as early as either of us has the first meeting of the day. And then if we know we're both going to be on the phone at the same time, maybe even being really loud on the phone, we go behind those closed doors and we split up. So we also do try to schedule things around each other. For example, if I know I have something that's a flexible meeting and he has an obligation meeting, I'll ask, you know, the person if it's with, if I can schedule it an hour later, just so I can minimize distraction. I hope that helps.
Great, thank you. We have another question, and you spoke a little bit about this, but for folks that are kind of first timers working from home and their offices are requiring them to do meetings over websites like Zoom or something like that, do you have specific suggestions on the tools that they'll need? So will they need to purchase a microphone? I know you mentioned the noise canceling headphones, but would they need to purchase a camera or a microphone, or what would you suggest there?
Yeah, so I work from a laptop. So right now I don't have any external microphone. I don't have any external camera. I'm just using the sound system that my laptop has. And this laptop is from 2018. If you are using a desktop setup and your computer or your monitor does not have a camera, there are external cameras and external microphones you can buy. I don't currently have any suggestions on those, but I could probably get you some if you are able to wait a day or two. I can do some research and reach out to my networks. So that's for Joel. Joel, feel free to email me. My email is going to be available at the end of the presentation, and I can hopefully get you some recommendations within a few days.
Great, thank you. And last question we'll take here is from Soma about organizing all of those papers and things you might have printed out for work. Do you have suggestions on, I'm sure a lot of us who are new to the work from home space that might have brought some of the paperwork that they neatly organized at their office. How do you suggest managing that at home?
Yes, that is great. And I think we should definitely touch on this. So I used to have a lot of papers on my desk in my office when I used to work in corporate full time. And essentially they like just types of mail I would get, even if it was like brochures or signed agreements, go through them and see which of them, and this could be like, you know, a nightly activity when you need to take your eyes off a screen. We were talking about getting your eyes off a screen before. I would say go through them and and organize them into, do these exist in electronic copy already in my hard drive or in my work files, or do they not? And for anything that needs to be scanned, consider scanning or taking photos of them just in case you misplace these papers and need the information one day. Journals, magazines, I would say put that, if they're distracting you on your desk and you don't want to look at them, what you can do is, we have an ottoman in our living room setup where we tend to just like put types of paper that we know we need, but we don't want to look at. And so it's an ottoman that has a hollowed out inside, and the top comes off and we can stash things in there. So what the ottoman has become, in addition to a place where we rest our feet, is kind of like a filing cabinet. And if you can get a small piece of furniture where you didn't have to throw anything out, and you're only keeping the important things, of course, not becoming a hoarder, but where it's like, a beneficial piece of furniture in your home or even in your office, like a cute ottoman that functions as like a second chair or a place to put your feet while you're on a phone call, that's something I recommend.
Great, okay, we will keep going with your next session.
Great. Okay, here we go. How to keep in touch with professional contacts. And this is the topic of an article that I put out very late last night. So that's something you can check out as a follow-up to this meeting. I've provided over 30 ways to keep in touch with professional contacts, and we're going to look at just a few of them right now. So first, remote work communication tools. You probably know about a few of these platforms, but maybe not all of them. Email is something we all use. Slack is a way that organizations can keep in touch through messaging and through channels. Usually it's used in tech companies or younger companies because it's it's a fun way to communicate. And it's also a way an organization can keep information all in one spot. Microsoft Teams is a lot like Slack, but owned by Microsoft. It's a chat application where you can have lots of groups, and you can create groups of essentially teams, the people in your department, but you can also create direct messages between two colleagues. WhatsApp is more of a communication app that, for anyone who doesn't know, and if you do have WhatsApp on your phone, something I'd like to share is that you can use WhatsApp on desktop. And that really changed my life because I can type I type faster and more comfortably on a large keyboard than I do on my phone, as probably most of us do. And if you can do all your WhatsApping from your keyboard, that will save you a lot of, thumb time and getting thumb cramps in your phone hands. Social media platforms are also how organizations communicate and put out communications, and how maybe you would be communicating with clients or for clients if that's your industry. Zoom, we already mentioned, but Zoom is a conferencing app where you can have meetings between as many as direct one-to-one chats to holding a webinar. And Skype for Business. Skype for Business can also be providing the same types of functions as Zoom, where you can host a meeting and share a screen over it. But some organizations also use Skype for Business with a buddy list and for intra-organizational one-on-one communication and instant messages. So my biggest tip is to communicate often. What I used to notice about employees within my organization when I worked full-time at a company was that 4 to 5 years ago, working remotely kind of had a bit of a negative connotation, as in the rest of the organization would look at, the people who work remotely and say, oh, we don't know where they are. We don't know if they're really working hard. And these kinds of like misconceptions about remote work just became kind of viral, because I think remote work was misunderstood between 5 and 10 years ago. So I think now that we are all the remote employee, the aim for all of us is to turn around all those misconceptions and to instead be proactive, be communicative, and be present. So in my list of tips, I say to calendar everything. And that means whether it's you being a freelancer needing to tell yourself you have a deadline at 5:30 and you need to block off 90 minutes before that 5:30 to, get that work for such a project done, that's up to you. But if you want to schedule a meeting with one colleague or with a team 3 days in advance, put it on the calendar as soon as you can so that everybody remains free. And so that nothing else comes up that'll get in the way of your catch-up session, your video session, or your team meeting. Next, we say use video meetings for discussions because it gives a human element to everyone. I think it's easy to forget that everyone behind the screen is a human, even if you're misunderstanding them, having a conflict with them, having a disagreement. Everyone is human and everyone's usually trying to do their best. So getting on a chat over video helps confirm that to everyone kind of emotionally. Also, starting social activities online, now that a lot of organizations have gone completely remote during coronavirus, is that you can start community activities like, oh gosh, I have a whole list of them in the article, but some organizations are having virtual talent shows, virtual cook-offs, company-wide catch-up sessions, sharing life milestones, for example, who had a baby and whose daughter is getting married. And all types of social things, even if it's just sharing a joke of the day, so that everyone remembers we're all human and we're all in this together and we're all going through our own challenges. And lastly, make scheduling convenient. So make sure you check things like time zones. If you work with colleagues in California or Colorado, you know, is your 10 a.m. meeting in New York or DC a little too early for someone who's waking up in San Francisco? Take that into account. And check with everyone before you put something on a calendar that they may have to reschedule. So lastly, we're talking about staying available and communicative. My biggest tips are to be present with your colleagues. If someone asks you for something and you can't deliver right away, the next best thing is to give them an estimate of when you can. And of course, that's something that we all do with work, but now that we're remote and we're not sitting next to our manager or next to our direct report, it pays to be very clear about expectation. So that being said, I recommend following up. And again, if you don't get a reply out of someone, it could be that they've been away from their desk for the day or they've been in a meeting for 3 hours and you can't tell just because, you know, you're not there and you don't see them missing at their desk. Next, be yourself and let your personality shine through. And a lot of this comes into play when people misread your tone through an email. For example, I've gotten emails where I've said, wow, I didn't expect him or her to come off with such a tone, but it's because tone can be, you know, misinterpreted through writing. So that's why it's also better to get people on the phone and on video. Next, be friendly and helpful, because these are things that always go a long way and help your team stay positive in these times of challenge and learning. Stay positive and solve problems rather than create them. And be on time and be early, whether it's showing that you're online for the day or showing up to a webinar or to a meeting first, rather than having the team wonder where you are and what you could be doing that's not that meeting. So now we jump into communication management question and answer sessions. If anybody has a remark to answer here.
Great, thanks, Rebecca. So we have a specific one about birthdays, as you talked about maintaining, you know, social atmospheres and keeping a positive vibe among coworkers. Do you have any suggestions for how to celebrate some of those birthdays that might be happening in the next month or so while we're all working from home?
Yeah, and that's a really good idea. That goes with all of those ideas for team virtual like types of fun to be had online. Just an idea that comes to mind is instead of, you know, offices tend to have small birthday parties or gather in the kitchen for cupcakes and maybe sing happy birthday. You can always kind of gang up secretly on the person whose birthday it is and start an email chain or a Slack channel or a Teams group to discuss how you could surprise that person on their special day. So maybe it's everyone sending them an email with a picture of a cake, or having a virtual gathering to all spam that person with happy birthday messages at 3 o'clock on, like, you know, Tuesday, the day of their birthday, or to send them a joke, or to have a threaded card that goes around where everybody signs it with like an e-signature. I think there are a lot of creative ways to create fun group dynamic activities, especially when it comes to celebrating birthdays.
Great, I love that. Another question from Megan, who's asking, how do you spark creativity when you're working from home? I know a lot of us are used to just walking over to our coworker's office and saying, hey, can you help me brainstorm X or Y? Do you have any suggestions about how to spark that creativity while you're working at home?
Yes, absolutely. So a lot of my online content has been inspired by travel and by working from lots of different places, which for me has been cafes, co-working spaces, just being in different environments where you're seeing different design elements and different types of people. And when you feel closed off, whether it's in your home office or your living room or your bedroom, wherever your work is happening for you right now, a lot of that seems to freeze up just because of your surroundings. What I suggest, especially for creatives, is I've become a part of several online communities where people just share tips, tricks, inspiring webinars to attend, inspiring groups to be in, like all day long. So if you can start researching, maybe based on your industry, if there are any online communities to join. There are lots of, whether it's email lists with like a daily newsletter of inspiring tips, or like-minded professionals, whether it's in the arts or music or performing or theater, whatever's going on in those communities, to just be part of a larger group of people who you can bounce ideas off of and learn from, I think is crucial right now.
Great, I love that. We have another question from Matthew Littenberg. So he wants to know a little bit more about balance. You referenced making sure that your coworkers know that you're active online, that you're showing up to meetings early, that you're, maintaining that communication while still at home. How do you balance maybe maintaining some of that social communication and connection while still being proactive and getting the work done and being productive?
Distracting. Let's see, a good way to balance making sure people know you're active. I would say taking a few of those tips, like, being the first to answer an email and saying like, hey, great idea. Like maybe let's think on this before we put it into action, or can we set up a meeting? Let people know you're active and engaged, even if you're working on other items, just by providing frequent status updates about what you have produced and the results you do have to share. And, limiting those responses with those status updates and those moments when you're exemplifying how present you are, to as quick as possible. If it really only requires you saying like yep, got it, or hey, you can expect that from me by 6 p.m. today, or hey, I'll be out of office tomorrow. Making those types of communications really succinct so that you have time to work on other things. And I hope that was helpful, because you're saying a bunch of things are distracting right now.
Great. Yeah, I appreciate that. And then we have a question from Mara here. And for all those supervisors out there, how do you set the tone for check-ins with your direct reports? How can you acknowledge that, there's still things that need to get accomplished, but people right now might not really be able to fill up that 40-hour work week?
That's really interesting. And that's, I was just reading this morning about tech companies that can't necessarily be remote, because a lot of people assume that tech is very remote and very remote friendly, but due to security, like, it might be assumed that all types of online work can be done online anywhere, but it's not the case. So Mara's saying they don't have enough work to fill up the 40-hour week, and she wants to set the tone for check-ins. I would say make the tone for check-ins friendly, transparent, and empathetic. I think that's all we can really do these days, especially because we don't know how long we're all going to be remote and how long this type of productivity is going to be stunted, if you could say even that much. But Mara, I would say when you're setting the tone for check-ins, definitely make it like I'm on the same page as you, I'm understanding, I'm, going through the same struggles and challenges and frustrations that you are right now, and we have to find solutions together to get through this. And I think the direct reports would really appreciate that, because it also, a lot of attitude within organizations starts from the top and filters down. So the more empathetic and understanding leaders can be, I think the more that will affect the mindsets and productivity and overall attitudes of those direct reports. So I hope that's helpful as well.
Great, thank you. That's all the questions we have from that section. If you want to continue, Rebecca.
Great, we have the last section and we have a remaining 10 minutes, so let's go right to it. We're gonna talk about how to turn working from home into a lifestyle. As I mentioned, a lot of what's going on in the world right now is unprecedented, and we don't know how long we're going to be working from home, which I think is truly unbelievable because we never thought we would see ourselves here, or maybe we thought we should have seen ourselves here. But in any case, it'll be a story to tell one day down the road. For now, the best we can do is think of all the actionable ideas that we can focus on while working from home. So first, consider that actions count more than before. As we were even just saying with those one-on-one meetings from Mara, having actions and having attitude can count more than before because, for example, having those manager meetings, those one-on-ones only happen for 1 hour a day, and in the same day, you can't step out to coffee with that individual. You can't wave to them on the elevator ride up when you're getting off the train or out of your car, and you're not going to see that person face to face. So actions online count a lot more than before. And I think for a lot of industries and for a lot of professionals, that's actually a really good thing because on the other hand, you're no longer being evaluated on if you stepped into the office at 9:05 a.m. because you are signed on, and if you're already being productive and putting out results by the same time, it doesn't really matter when you step into the office anymore, so to speak. Being patient is really good, and being empathetic and being understanding and understanding that everyone right now has different types of challenges, whether it's juggling kids who are being homeschooled for the first time by parents who are both working full-time from the home in the same room where the kids are playing, to people who might be sharing home office spaces with roommates, and they might be roommates that they've never really gotten along with. So all those types of crazy challenges that are being forced upon us right now that we have to shine through with positive solutions to. The next is communicating updates, issues, concerns, and deadlines clearly. We have to communicate what we can do and what we can't. And usually when I communicate what I can't do, I provide an alternative. So for example, if a client is asking for something massive in the next 2 days, what I can say is I can provide you half of this and I can provide half the next week, and working on those, meeting halfway, those compromises, making sure deadlines can be met, but also people can get what they want. And lastly, come to appreciate productivity both for you and for your colleagues. So don't forget to be proud of what you are doing and what your team is doing, and focus on the good and not always the bad. Next, I recommend continually evaluating your home office to determine if your home office experience is working for you, and are there any adjustments you could make. For example, if you have a neck ache by the end of week 1 and it's worse by week 2, consider getting something like a laptop stand or a desk riser so that you're not looking down like I am right now. You might need more productivity tools, whether that's software or hardware. You might need to rethink your Wi-Fi speed and connectivity if you have meetings that are getting gurgled and blurry, and if you're the one who is dropping out. You might need to rethink your level of comfort, both ergonomically and mentally. Again, if you have those office distractions, that big pile of papers that came with you the day you moved out of your office, what to do with it, and how can you, focus on your back if you have a bad back, or focus on your legs not going numb while sitting in the same sedentary position for a while in your basement. All of these things do have solutions, so I can definitely help work with you on that. Lastly, we want to focus on inspiration and motivation, keeping in mind that work can take place anywhere where we are motivated and inspired to do better every day. Lastly, there are positive lasting effects of working remotely that you may not have thought of, just because I really do appreciate that you're here with me for this 60-minute session in your busy day, in your busy week from home, trying to not go crazy. So the positive effects of working remotely are saving commuting time. For example, I used to spend, 45 minutes going from Brooklyn into Manhattan, where my office was, worrying about my train getting delayed, and then maybe sweating next to really sweaty people in the summer. And now none of that is happening because I've saved time not commuting anywhere. And aside from that, you're saving energy, especially if you were driving up to an hour to your office, spending money on gas, spending money on car repairs. I can foresee that our skies are going to get a lot clearer because so many people have stopped driving right now. Next, there's the health effects of working from home, because now that you work from, your basement, your living room, or your home office, you can take that 30-minute yoga break, get a little sweaty, and get right back to work, and hopefully no one will even notice. You can also cut distraction, because if you think about it, the distractions of working in an office are things like getting up to go to the restroom and seeing that someone is in there and having to wait and having to go to another floor. And by that time, you already lost 10 minutes and maybe you're late for something else. Or someone booked a meeting room and, oh my gosh, how did he book the meeting room when I did? Because that's something we can probably all relate to. But we can cut that out now because meetings take place on Zoom and the meeting rooms are never full. Family time is something you're probably getting a big dose of if you have kids home from school right now, whether it's in a good way or in a stressful way. But let's face it, we're spending time with family because we're not commuting. And also time for hobbies. For example, I keep talking about yoga, and that's because I really enjoy it. When I'm on the way from my kitchen to my desk, there's a yoga mat set up in the middle. So I usually drop down for a bit of stretching before I get back to work. And lastly, we talked about getting new types of products, learning to use Zoom. So there really are a lot of new technology skills to learn, even for me, being a co-host of a webinar, using the chat box, sharing the screen. I think there's an opportunity for everyone to be engaging with and improving with technology every single day. And now we have questions and answers. And just any questions and answers, and then I can wrap up with about how to keep in touch with me after we're done here.
Great, thanks, Rebecca. We have time for probably one question in this section, and then again, I'll let you give out your email address and ways for people to contact you with specific and personal questions. But one general question was about the background for some of your Zoom video meetings. Do you have suggestions for what that could look like, as some of us are really trying to, create an office maybe in our kitchen or in our living room, in our basement, like you mentioned. Do you have suggestions for what a background could look like when we do have those video calls that need to look professional?
Yes, I think this is a great question. And I think probably everyone dialed into this call right now has had a video call in the past week and has said, oh my gosh, are all my coworkers seeing the art on my wall, or did they just see my kids walk by? Because I'm definitely thinking of that when my boyfriend is on a call and I'm like, oh, I just want to grab my cup of coffee, but it's in the background of his call, and what do I do? I think we've all thought about that. So there are a few ways to think of it. One is, if you have this at your disposal, turn your laptop so that you face a wall or a window, but consider that windows provide or create backlighting, so it might make your face dark and it might create a very bright window. But if you're in a room with few windows, try to turn your laptop or turn your table maybe so that the background of the call is a wall. I would say that's the simplest way to solve this. And if you're in an open room, maybe have some sort of code. Actually, an old colleague shared with me that she has a Lego code for her husband and her son, where if they have a red Lego, it means I'm in a call. And if it's a yellow Lego, it means I'm getting ready for a call. And if there's a green Lego, it means I'm free. You can walk by right now. So maybe thinking of a creative system where, a signal to the rest of the family that I'm going into a call, please don't walk by my, the periphery of my screen. Yeah, so a few of those. I mean, you have to see what works for you because everyone's home setup is different. But you can even also do a test call with one colleague, maybe you're close with, or with a friend, and create like a test Zoom call and say, how do I look? And, is my background distracting? Those are a few ideas.
Great. I love that. I love the Lego code, and looks like Kathy chatted into everyone. You can also use a portable screen behind your chair. That might help as well.
Yeah.
So it looks like we've covered all of our questions. Rebecca, is there anything else you want to cover before we wrap up?
Sure. So I just wanted to share a little few tips about how I work from home. It is 12:59. I do engage in daily physical activity, whether it's taking a walk or doing some online yoga from the comfort of my home. I suggest really eating well and focusing on health because it helps clear your mind when you're not bogged down with sugar, salt, fat, all those bad things. Having natural light in your environment is also nice because it helps keep in check what time of day it is, and it helps you feel brighter and more focused. Having motivational music for the time when you're not in a call or in a conference can be really nice, especially if it's something upbeat and without lyrics. It becomes, more of a beat to work to and less distracting. And lastly, connecting with communities online, especially if you're a freelancer, a creative, anyone who is kind of feels alone right now. I put out an article, as I mentioned this morning, that I'll share with you about how to connect online with other like-minded individuals. So here are all my remote work tips. I understand this might not be clickable for anyone, but if you go to halfhalftravel.com, that's halfhalftravel.com/remote work, or really even if you go to halfhalftravel.com, there's a menu bar at the top where you can find remote work with a little laptop icon, really cute. You'll access all of my remote work tips and tricks, and especially my home office guide, where I'm recommending lots of types of office products that I really do use. To keep in touch on social media, again, please do shoot me a message. Tell me you were in this webinar today, and I would love to hear from you. It's Half Half Travel on Instagram and Half Half Travel on Facebook, again, where I'm sharing remote work tips every day. And here's a longer list of how to stay connected: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest. Half Half Travel has a newsletter where we send out our remote work tips. You can sign up. And lastly, halfhalftravel@gmail.com is where to reach me if we spoke about anything in the Q&A during this webinar that you'd like to follow up with. And any final questions, let me know.
Great. Feel free to connect with Rebecca directly if you would like to discuss your personal situation. If you missed anything or you want to look back on Rebecca's content, a recording of this webinar will be sent to the email address you used to register for this webinar. I want to thank everyone for joining us today, and especially thanking Rebecca for her hard work. I hope everyone has a wonderful day. Hope you all stay healthy, and go Terps.